Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to another Stock Market Outlook video. Dive right in, let's start with the charts of the true market leaders. I've got them sorted by their weekly change, and if we open this up, you can see that not too many are hitting price new highs on Friday, but overall in the week, the majority of them had excellent performances. So starting with Peloton, you can see it's trending above all those key moving averages, and after this huge gap up, has held it quite well. You had a nice reversal bar on Wednesday, and then on the shortened trading day on this Thursday, pretty mild action, although you can see it was down from the high. CELH, you can see is trending above all those key moving averages with the RS line moving into all-time highs as well. Looks very strong. ENPH is leading the solar stocks, and you can see had a really nice week and is up nicely from this 3-bar break off the 21 EMA. MVCR, you can see, is continuing its upward trend here after it found support down here at about 154 and is right at all-time highs with the RS line right there as well. CrowdStrike has moved up quite quickly from this earnings gap up, and so far last week had a nice reversal bar on this Wednesday, and then once again an inside day consolidation day on this Thursday. GRWG trending above all those key moving averages. This is a potential high tide flag, and you could have used the downward trend line here as your entry point, and you also have an inside bar and up on this Tuesday right here. Looks strong, RS line right near all-time highs, trending beautifully above the 21 EMA and 50 SMA, and overall looks very, very good. Next up, we've got apps, and overall it's trending above all those key moving averages with the RS line right near all-time highs as well. It's continuing its strong run in 2020, and overall you can see that there was a potential negative bar here, although it was on lower volume. But on Thursday, we had a nice kind of end to the week with a good closing range and an inside day. Moving on, we've got PLTR, which has been a very strong IPO, breaking out of its IPO base here, as well as a small VCP here with a few contractions. And now it's moved up about 100% and forming, once again, a VCP with the breakout on the 21st. Overall, a nice recovery here on this Tuesday, and then all the action was contained within this bar right here. Moving on, we've got XP, which is trending above all those key moving averages, just broke out of a stage 2 base here after a very strong prior uptrend. Great earnings, sales, and it looks very, very strong. You can see that all this action right here on this Wednesday and Thursday was contained within this bar, which showed nice action moving off the lows on higher volume. Next up, we've got Shop, which broke out above this little pivot here on this Wednesday of the 16th, and overall is still showing strong action. You do have a potential reversal on higher volume this Wednesday, but then a decent recovery on Friday, although it was on lower volume. Next up, we've got Zillow, and overall, after the strong move up from this tight area here near the 21 EMA, it's consolidated that move really well, formed a kind of tight shelf here along the 10 SMA, a really nice reversal action on this Monday, the 21st. Next up, we've got ZS, which is another momentum gap up, and overall, after this strong move up on huge volume, it's continued its upward trend, is right near all-time highs with the RS line right there as well. Moving on, we've got Roku, and overall, this is exactly what you want to see with any stock that you own. A great trend above all those key moving averages, and I would take a break of this moving average as a potential character change. Fetch as well is trending above all those key moving averages. Nice reversal bar on this 16th. Decent volume coming in on that day, although you can see that volume has been lower lately, and it is starting to kind of slow its momentum just a little bit. Pins, you can see, tried to break out on this Wednesday right here, but then squatted, and then you had a very negative bar on this Thursday, although it was on lower volume given the half day. So a little mixed signals here, but overall it might need a little bit more time, maybe another visit to the 21 EMA before it breaks out of the short-term shelf. Moving on, we've got Fiber, which also tried to break out last week on this Monday, but then squatted and basically pulled back to the pivot on this Thursday. So potentially it'll find support at the 10 SMA and retry this breakout, but it might need a little bit more time. And overall, it's had a huge move, and it might need a significant base to absorb and consolidate that huge prior uptrend. Moving on, we've got ETHE, which is trending above all those key moving averages. Looks very strong. Just emerged from this kind of base on base pattern here, and overall had a kind of negative day on this Wednesday, but then a nice day on this Thursday. Moving on, we've got Twilio, which is trending above all those key moving averages. Looks good, right near all-time highs, with the RS line there as well. Next up, we've got Neo, which after this huge prior uptrend is consolidating a little bit. You got nice action on the 2nd of December, and so far it's pulled back, but hasn't broken this low here, and actually bounced off the 10-week moving average if we go to a weekly chart here. And since then, it has consolidated a little bit and pulled back to the 21 EMA. And this could be a very good low risk entry. And you could draw a little kind of horizontal line here near the high of this Tuesday, the 22nd. Next up, we've got NET, which is continuing to trend above all those key moving averages. It did lose the 10 SMA on this Wednesday, but rebounded sharply with a good day on Thursday. Moving on, we've got Tesla, and overall you can see a nice action here from this base, a really strong move up above all those key moving averages. And then you can see recently it had a nice reversal bar on this Tuesday, then strong action with a good closing range on Wednesday, and a very good end to the week on Thursday. Next up, we've got TDD, which continues to move up from the earnings gap up. Looks very, very good above all those key moving averages except the 10 SMA. And it looks very good with the RS line right near all-time highs. Moving on, we've got Melly, which is trending above all those key moving averages and looks very, very good right near all-time highs. SC as well, you can see is above the 21 EMA and 50 SMA. And you can see it bounced off the pivot here at about 187, but isn't quite trending into all-time highs just yet. Next up, we've got AMD, and you can see it's pulled back to the 21 EMA and the kind of standard pivot of this base here, of this double bottom. And overall looks pretty good. You can see it's on lower volume, this pullback, and this action looks constructive. Moving on, we've got SQ, which is above all those key moving averages, just barely above the 10 SMA here. And overall, its relative strength is right near all-time highs, although it is potentially short-term extended from a proper entry point. Moving on, we've got Corsair, another strong IPO, and overall it tried to move up from the 21 EMA this past week, but then had some reversal action on higher volume, as now broken the 21 EMA. So this could need a little bit more time to form out kind of a longer term base. If you think of this as symmetrical, it might need a few more weeks before it starts moving up the right side over here. Next up, we've got Upwork, and overall you can see that it broke the 10 SMA on this Thursday on low volume, given that it was a half day. But overall it looks strong, potentially revisiting the 21 EMA, but this should offer a pretty good low risk entry, especially considering that it lines up pretty closely with the top right here. Lastly, we've got Snap, and overall this ended the week pretty poorly, but overall is hanging above the 21 EMA. And overall, the pullback is on lower volume, as you can see down here. So in summary, the true market leaders are acting pretty well. You've got a bunch of them up over 5% on the week, and a couple hitting new price and relative strength all-time highs. So moving on, let's talk about the market indexes, and let's start with the QQQ on a daily time frame. So overall this week, it was shortened because of the holiday season, but it starts with this Monday with a nice reversal bar here. And you can see that this bar went all the way back near the 21 EMA and then reversed higher through the low, and also with a nice closing range right near the top of the day. Then the next day, you can see we had another reversal bar. This time it finished green. Then we had two consolidation days on Wednesday and Friday. So overall, the price action looks constructive as we pull back to this prior high of the base. So hopefully we can continue to move up and break this high and this high right here and trend above those key moving averages. And overall, you can see that on the week, the QQQ was down 0.16%, but it had a very strong weekly closing range of 83.8%, with a daily closing range on Friday of 71.8%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend at this time. Moving on to the SPY, you can see once again we were down on the week, down 0.05%, with a really strong weekly closing range of 91.8% and a daily closing range on Friday of 98.1%. So the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend at this time. Next up, we've got the Russell 2000, the IWM, and overall we are up 1.88% on this index with a weekly closing range of 89% and a daily closing range on Friday of 50.5%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a nice stage 2 uptrend. And it is a good sign that the small caps are leading and doing well, but you can see they've been up for a whole bunch of weeks in a row. So keep that in mind. They could be in for a short-term pullback in the near future. Next up, we've got GBTC, and overall on the week, we were down 7.23% with a weekly closing range of 16.2% and a daily closing range of 39.8%. And overall, the expectation for this bar is sideways or lower, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Next up, we've got Ethereum, which was also down 19.6% with a weekly closing range of 6.1% and a daily closing range on Friday of 16.5%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Next up, we've got the Dow Jones ETF, the DIA, and overall we are up 0.04% on the week with a weekly closing range of 82.9% and a daily closing range on Friday of 93.2%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Looking at how growth stocks performed, you can see that overall we were down 0.38% on the IBD 50 ETF, and we had a weekly closing range of 48.5% and a daily closing range of 24% on Friday. So a little bit of a mixed signal here, and the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher. And it's good to see that the volume in this down week is lower than this previous strong breakout. Next up, we've got gold, and overall a nice reversal bar here on the week, down 0.05% with a weekly closing range of 77.3% and a daily closing range on Friday of 97.7%. The expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are not in a stage 2 uptrend. Next up, we've got the VIX, and overall you can see the huge spike here, and then the finish right near the lows of the trading week, which is a good sign. And overall, it was down 0.19% with a weekly closing range of 1.9% and a daily closing range on Friday of 9.7%. So the expectation from this bar is sideways or lower. And finally, we've got the XLF, and overall it was up 1.61% on this week with a weekly closing range of 85.8%, and still within this kind of consolidation here at about a high of 29. So the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend, although we're still not approaching these highs just yet. So that is a run through of the major ETFs, and overall good signs from the QQQ and SPY. A nice consolidation week and good close to the week after a poor start. So moving on, we've got my watch list from this previous week, and let's sort by the weekly change. And overall, the top performers from my focus list were ETHE, LSPD, CRSP, and also Uber. And overall, you've got a couple down here as well. EH continued its strong uptrend. Let's go back to a main chart here, and you can see there's a pivot at this high 2104 set on the 17th, which it broke on this Monday. Had nice action, great volume coming in here, and overall looks very, very strong. Consolidation days on Thursday, or actually Wednesday and Thursday. Very as well was up 21%. You can see a nice 3-bar break on this Monday, and then a nice continuation and break of the downward trend line later on in the week. And looking at the focus list, you can see that ETHE was the top performer, and overall on this Monday, it increased on huge volume through the pivot that I talked about from this high at 65.25 and also this prior high at 67.68. So you could have set a buy stop here at either of those points and made a nice gain here. And then you can see that on this Tuesday, it did reverse somewhat, but then had a nice upside reversal bar on Wednesday and then an up day on Thursday. Next up, we've got LSPD, and overall you can see it did gap down on this week, then found support at the 21 EMA and reversed through the low of this day, which is a potential entry point, and then had a nice bullish outside day here, finishing above the high of this day right here, and also breaking the pivot that I talked about at this high of 60.67. Then it had a continued move up on this Tuesday, up a further 10.62%, and then a nice day on this Wednesday, finishing well off the lows, and a nice inside day on this Thursday. Next up, we've got CRISPR, and overall, like Edit, it broke out on this Monday, breaking above this pivot and also the downward trend line, and then pretty much moving sideways after that this week. Next up, we've got Uber, and overall, you can see it also had a nice upside reversal on this Monday, breaking through the low of the previous day and also breaking above its high. So once again, a bullish outside reversal, also overtaking the 21 EMA. And then you had nice action on this Tuesday, and then it pretty much went sideways and was contained within this bars range the rest of the week. Moving on, we've got PLTR, and overall had a nice VCP breakout on this Monday with a nice upside reversal and bullish outside day, breaking above both the high of this day and also the previous day. And then a nice move off the lows on this Tuesday, and then it pretty much went sideways the rest of the week. Looking at ZI, you can see it broke out of this inside day on Monday and above this high, and had nice continuation on Tuesday and Wednesday, but then had a kind of negative bar on this Thursday. And although it was on low volume, this is pretty high volume considering it was only a half day. So keep that in mind. If you do own it, this is kind of an expectation breaker. You would want it to continue upwards or pull back and stay within this day's range, but instead it broke below it on decently high volume considering the shortened trading day. Next up, we've got SWAV, and it tried to break out on this Tuesday, but squatted a little bit well off its highs, and then had an inside day on this Wednesday, and then a kind of negative expectation breaker here. And this would make me sell my entire position if I entered on this day right here. Moving on, we've got Frog, and overall it tried to break out on this Thursday, but then squatted hard, but still looks interesting here because it is so tight against those key moving averages. MRVI, you can see try to break out of this range on Tuesday, but then pull back the rest of the week as it really forms out this handle a little bit more maturely. Moving on, we've got RXT, which looks very, very good. You can see that overall it went sideways this week, and actually if you go to a weekly chart, this was an inside week here, and overall is forming out this handle really nicely above the 21 EMA, and you've got the standard pivot here at 21.15. And lastly, we've got FFTY, which kind of broke expectations here because you wanted it to continue upwards through this downward trend line. And instead, it kind of squatted at the 21 EMA, had a negative day on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on higher volume. And you can see that this day, even though it was a shortened day, was still above average down volume, which isn't a good sign. So in my view, there are better options out there, and you have to let this set up constructively once again. So that's a quick summary of my focus list from this past week. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow when I'll be posting my next list on this channel. So moving on, let's talk about my sentiment surveys here on Twitter. And overall, you can see we're still quite bullish at 57%, but it is a decrease from this past week where we are almost at 60%. So moving on, we've got the Bulls vs. Bears poll, and overall it is decreasing at this time, although it's still quite elevated above even the 2018 levels back here. Looking at the put call ratio, you can see we are actually increasing a little bit, but once again, we're still very elevated. And I want to be clear that these are secondary indicators that I use only after considering price action of my stocks, the true market leaders, and the market indexes. And even though this is elevated, I will still buy positions. For me, only really the extremes, especially on the low end, are worth considering. So with that said, let's move on to the IBD Big Picture. And overall, the title is Growth Stocks Deliver Mild Christmas Eve Gains, 5 Tips to Succeed in 2021. Reading through, they talk about how we still are in a confirmed uptrend. We did have a mild distribution day on Wednesday on the NASDAQ, but the S&P 500 distribution day from November 18th expired because of the time condition. And moving on, they give some tips for 2021. Tip number 1 is to stay on the right side of the market trend using the IBD Big Picture. And number 2 is don't get psyched out by psychological gauges. So exactly what I talked about. These are secondary indicators, and ultimately price and volume action are much, much more important. Number 3 is embrace companies with something new so that N and can slim, such as onto innovation. Number 4 is don't let a good gain turn into a round trip. So they give the example of FFTY, which you can see is the chart right here, which if you bought on the breakout here would have completely reversed the gains given the action of the previous week. So take some profits on the way up and move your stop up. So at the very least, it's a profitable trade. And number 5 is, as I just said, take plenty of gains on the way up. Eventually, even top stocks pull back and come to an area which you might have taken profits before. So keep your watch list fresh and be ready for 2021. Overall, the current outlook is a confirmed uptrend, and we now have 4 distribution days on the S&P 500 and 3 on the NASDAQ. So to round out the video, let's take a look at the GMI Signal, which is still green since November 5th. And overall, the GMI score is a 6 out of 6, which is very, very good. So all in all, taking everything into account, my current view is we are still in a confirmed uptrend, and I'll be looking to add to my current stocks if they break out of short-term shelves, or look for new opportunities if they set up constructively. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys in future videos.